Next, we have the talk show on future trends in blockchain. Now, I please welcome Yiwen Li, Kalika Gupta, Monisha Coelho, and Maryam on the stage. Thank you so much.
All right. I know we lost some people after that talk, but I'm sure people will filter back. So good afternoon, everybody, and welcome. I hope you're having a good afternoon. My name is Monisha Coelho. I am a co-chair for Thai SoCal Women's Initiative. And this is our panel on future trends in blockchain. On the panel today is Yiwen Li, Maryam Mahdaviani, and our very own Kalika Gupta. They will each introduce themselves as they speak to be more time effective. Before we get started, so how many people know anything about blockchain? Show of hands. How many people think blockchain and crypto are the same thing? Very good. How many people bought FTX or FTT? True. Nobody will admit if they bought. How many people are buying Ethereum now that it's only 1,200? And how many people think it's going to drop more? What do you think Ethereum's going to go down to? True, whole market's going down. Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is not crypto, right? And when we were trying to come up with a description, I think the simplest way of trying to figure out the difference between crypto and blockchain is kind of the Christmas tree, right? You take a bare Christmas tree, you can put a bunch of stuff on it. Right, you can put candy cane and baubles and stars and streamers. So crypto is one of the baubles you get on your Christmas tree. There's a bunch of other things that go on there. And what we're going to talk about today is all the other uses and applications that happen on blockchain. Okay, so this is my slide, and then the rest of that will be done by our speakers. So I am a lawyer. I'm a partner at the law firm of AlvaradoSmith. I'm a corporate and business lawyer. I also handle a cross-border India-US practice because I actually grew up in Bombay and I practiced law there before I moved to the US in the early 2000s. So this slide will help you understand what we're talking about for the rest of the panel, which is how much the US, both at the state government level and the federal government level, is coming up with legislation to adopt blockchain in a wide variety of uses, right? So California has 3 or 4 bills in the first column. So California has set up an Office of Digital Innovation, which will look at using blockchain for driver's licenses, so putting your driver's license on a digital wallet. EDD is looking at blockchain to be able to identify people and maybe pay out unemployment benefits on that. California is also looking at marriage, death, and birth certificates and being able to put those certificates on blockchain, and as well as credentialing. Other states are passing similar legislation. So Colorado is looking at blockchain and agricultural uses. Iowa is passing a law on smart contract enforceability. Kentucky is looking at insurance innovation in blockchain. Massachusetts is looking at signing nomination papers using blockchain. Nebraska, farm traceability. The federal government has come up with the Blockchain Innovation Act 2022. So as you see, cryptocurrency, apart from cryptocurrency, at the business use level, there's a lot of work that's going to be happening, a lot of innovation that's going to happen with blockchain. As a side note, in terms of cryptocurrency, I will just say if you have a business where you're issuing tokens and coins, you're very likely governed by the SEC and the Securities and Exchange Act, as well as maybe the Commodities Exchange. So if you're not complying with those laws, you're looking at white-collar crime, liability somewhere down the line. So there's that. Okay. So my first question is to Maryam. If you can introduce yourself briefly and then, help us understand what type of records go on blockchain and what are the properties of blockchain that make it most conducive to use records that are kept on blockchain.
Hello, everyone. Such a pleasure to be here, and looking forward to the opportunity to meet you in person after the panel. So right now, as is stated on the names, I'm working on a startup that's still in stealth mode, but at the same time, I'm helping a few different startups as a consultant, advisor, and investor. One of the notable ones is Glow Labs, which is a venture-funded rewards platform that is blockchain-based and is for Web3. Actually, given that the founder is here, the other company that I'm helping with as an advisor is actually GiftPass, and the founder is sitting over there. My company is also, even though it is in stealth mode, I could say that it is relying on the form of identity and having the work history as a form of identity for individuals on chain. Prior to these engagements, I was head of product at Honey, and I was there when the company got acquired by PayPal for $4 billion in 2020. That was the biggest acquisition, the biggest tech acquisition in Los Angeles. And before Honey, I was head of product for banking as a service at Green Dot, another LA-based company based in Pasadena, and I was in charge of banking as a service platform over there and spinning that off the ground. My training is in computer science and machine learning, and I've been a founder and operator for a while. To answer your question, I want to take a moment to actually take you down the history lane. In late 80s, two scientists with the vision that all the records are going to be online at some point, and with the amazement of a scandal for a biology paper, they were curious how they could come up with a framework to have the digital records to be basically immutable and to be safe. So they started working on a system which resulted in the first papers with the concept of blockchain, and that was late 80s, early 90s. It was the name of the scientists, Struneta and Haber, and their papers were noted in the famous Bitcoin white paper in 2008. And the reason I want to bring that up is the main reason blockchain was invented and the scientists worked at the concept was how digital records could be stored in a safe manner, and basically how plagiarism could be kept aside, right? At that time, it was too early. Most records were still not, digital. The cost of implementing a system that was keeping the record safe with cryptography was very high, so it was not used. But then, when in 2008 was used that concept as a method of exchange for monetary transactions, and Bitcoin was introduced, kind of gradually it got a lot of interest. And the whole idea, as you are probably aware, was, okay, how these records, could be kept and stored, in a safe manner in basically a distributed database, which is a blockchain. Blockchain is basically nothing than distributed database in a way that is not governed just by a central agency. Could be a bank, could be the government, could be the city. Right now, all our titles for our properties are kept by the city. So how they could be actually stored in a way that they are immutable and they cannot be changed and they cannot be hacked, and the power is based on cryptography. So saying that, even though blockchains could be used, for cryptocurrencies or any monetary transactions that are not governed by central banks around the world, the applications are well beyond And many sorts of data could be stored on blockchain, because yet again, it's basic blockchain is nothing than a distributed database. The cost is still high for storing some forms of data, but we're getting there, and from anywhere from storing contracts to digital assets, they could be stored on databases. Yeah.
Thanks, Maryam. I know one of the things that's interesting to a lot of people is the actual products and companies that our speakers are involved in, products that they're working on, companies they're investing in. So we're going to talk to all our speakers now about what products they're actually engaged in that are blockchain related. So Yiwen, what are the blockchain applications and products that you're working on? Take a few minutes to introduce yourself and tell us the companies you're investing in and the other blockchain relationships.
Thank you, Monisha, and thanks for inviting me here. I actually just flew in. I was so afraid that I will be late, so just got in here 10 minutes ago. My name is Yiwen. I was made in China, was actually made in Wuhan. And my current job is I'm a principal and investor at Alumni Ventures. Alumni Ventures is a venture capital firm. We're actually the third most active fund in the world. We manage over 1 billion assets and have over 1,000 active portfolio companies. So just to explain Alumni Venture how it works, some of you might know us because we have 8,000 investors, and most of them are alums from top universities. And we have funds around university ecosystem. We also have sector-specific funds. So I manage both a blockchain-specific fund and fund for the UCLA ecosystem. So see a lot of activities in blockchain and non-blockchain space. Before that, I was working at a holding company called Networks. It's a holding company funded by LA-based billionaire visionary Dr. Patrick Soon-Shiong, and there I did a lot of healthcare-related investment. So I'll talk a little bit about healthcare and blockchain. And then before that, I was working at Capital Group, also based in LA. It's a large asset management company. So basically, my trajectory was going from investing in the public space to family office, now to venture. So moving from the later stage all the way back to more risky, earlier, but more fun stage. Blockchain startup, it's kind of double risk, especially, Monisha, you mentioned what happened with FTX. It's a very interesting time. So before I talk about the application, I also wanted just to talk about a little bit how, not from a technical perspective, but from a consumer engagement or investing perspective, the timeline. So I think probably everyone think about or heard about blockchain because of the surging price or falling price of Bitcoin. So the first retail run, which means the first time when maybe you and your dog, your mom, all was thinking about investing Bitcoin was in 2017, when it went from $300 all the way to, I think, 20,000. And everyone opened a Coinbase account, hopefully at that time not FTX account. And then from there in 2018, it went all the way back from 20,000 to 3,000. And that time there was something called ICO. So initial coin offering, 19 billion of assets kind of evaporated during that time, the first retail run. Now, then we went into a crypto winter from 2018 to 2020. In 2020, something happened, it's called a DeFi summer. DeFi stands for decentralized finance. A lot of people start to do yield farming. It's kind of like interest you earn through staking. And again, that together with the popularity of NFT from last year pushed the entire market very much again to its all-time high. Bitcoin was at 60,000. And then something happened, the Luna crash, which is one of the largest stablecoin, Luna. Overnight, over 30 billion evaporated. So that took us down, together with the kind of macroeconomic recession to today, and to make it worse, FTX going bankrupt. So we're really, really at a kind of very freezing, it's a freezing crypto winter right now. But as a blockchain investor, I'm still optimistic. I kind of have to be optimistic. But I am optimistic because, to your point, Monisha, there are real applications of blockchain technology. To your point, Maryam, so blockchain had the biggest benefit of blockchain is decentralization, immutable security, privacy, all of that. So blockchain actually has fundamental application to every industry. I'll use example that we invested in. I can't disclose the name, but one of the company we invested in is to help creators, so musicians, artists, especially musicians, to make money directly on chain. So people can purchase their songs or the art piece that they created directly on blockchain, and right away they get a royalty instantaneously when a piece of art or a piece of song has been purchased. So there's the middleman in between, like basically the Hollywood or the labels in between is not necessary. Not only it creates direct revenue for artists, it also creates direct engagement with the musicians or artists directly with their super fans. So I really think, given that we're the entertainment capital of the world, there is a huge disruption coming into Hollywood and to music industry. The other application that I mentioned that I work on healthcare a lot. So there are a lot of healthcare genomic data, phenome data that now are stored in EMR, EHR. And if anyone who dealt with EMR, it's a very tedious process. So we haven't invested in any company yet, but there are a lot of companies which also I'm personally interested because I had a healthcare and blockchain kind of investing background, is to see the intersection between healthcare data and blockchain, how we can use blockchain to collaborate more efficiently with pharmaceutical companies, providers, and insurance company on blockchain together to remove a lot of the layers that we see in EMR, EHR. Yeah, I think I'll give this two for now as an example and can chat later.
Sure, Kalika?
So I'm
And
Kalika
introduce
Gupta.
yourself too.
Yeah. I'm Kalika Gupta. Of course, I'm a charter member. I have the honor of being a charter member here. But in my day job, I am currently the managing director of IT at a wealth management company called Cetera Financial Group. I've been with the company for 3 years, but prior to Cetera, I was with Toyota Financial Services for 15 years, where I had the opportunity of dabbling in blockchain. In early 2016-17, the Corda consortium was formed. Toyota Financial Services was one of the pioneering members of the consortium, and I represented Toyota on the consortium. So that was my first foray into actually playing around with blockchain. Of course, we've all heard about the Silk Route and all of that stuff. My introduction to Bitcoin was through my son, who was in high school when the Silk Route crisis happened. And although all of you have gone through booms and busts of Bitcoin, I'm sure none of you are really following what blockchain's doing. So it's one of those tech nerdy things that if you're really a blockchain enthusiast like me, will follow it, even though that's not your day job. So at Toyota, what we were doing is we were doing a bunch of POCs. Being the corporation, not like startups and investors, we were very wary of blockchain. What can it really do? How can our old legacy systems be around or can even be replaced by blockchain? So without doing POCs, it was very difficult to see what the promise of blockchain was. So we started dabbling a little bit on blockchain, trying to do POCs on digitization of our parts, right? Specifically, we worked with one part, which is the door of any car. If you do not know, there are over 500 suppliers in that one area that Toyota actually works with. They give contracts to one or not the other. But when the recall happened, there was no way of knowing where the parts were, where in the supply chain the parts were. Some of them were rotting in the warehouses, some of it they're in transit. So that's what steered our whole POC to see, can we digitize the parts? And then, of course, we do syndicate financing, so we were also dabbling with a little bit of a POC on that. Syndicate financing, if you're not aware of, is a very complex instrument that a lot of the large Toyota dealers use that to put the vehicles on their floor, on the lots. The large Toyota dealers that you see which have large vehicles use syndicate financing. So dabbling on that, perked my interest in blockchain, and that's why I'm here, because I'm representing the industry.
Thank you, Kalika. And actually, I'm going to start with you and, on the barriers that we see to blockchain, and then also come back to you and Maryam, and you can talk about other companies and products you're working on where you saw specific barriers. So Kalika, if you can talk to us, on the barriers to adoption.
So, being part of technology and being a technology nerd, I was thinking this is a cool technology. Let's educate everyone. We started a blockchain education program. It was really hard for people who had never used blockchain to really understand how is this any different than a normal database. So the mindset, the skill set, or even the in-house skill in an industry or in a company to understand blockchain wasn't there. That was, at least my personal opinion, the first blocker that we found. The second one was the cost, because you have all these legacy systems which are sitting around in your company for years. Who's going to rip that off and replace it with something new? It was not even fathomable that we could do that. The other thing was also the complexity, like which part of the system stays, which part of the system integrates with the block, was very difficult for anybody to fathom. So in 2019, Deloitte did a study, and they named almost 28% to 30% of all the interviewers said that complexity of implementation was the biggest barrier to adoption of blockchain. The other thing also came about is, permissioned versus non-permissioned blockchain. Being in financial services, people thought their data would be hackable. If I put it on a public cloud or a public blockchain, somebody can get to it. And it was not even thinkable. Like, it didn't even go past our vice president that we could go any further on syndicate financing unless we said, let's go to a permissioned blockchain. At that time, JP Morgan had formed their consortium, their platform called Quorum. So that's where we started, because it was a permissioned blockchain. So security was the next big hindrance in my experience. Last but not the least was just the mindset. Oh, this is crypto. No, this is not crypto. This is the technology which is very different from crypto. So the changing the mindset in the boardrooms became quite a task. That's why we started a blockchain education panel. Like every week we would meet, we would talk about blockchain, we'll give away candies, we had lunches. So just in case, just so that everybody knew what blockchain was. Many companies at that time, Capital Group being one of them, were hosting seminars, and they were inviting other people or other executives from other companies to come and join that. And they were inviting leaders from all over the country to talk about blockchain as a technology. So, some of those things where we actually had to educate people in the boardroom, educate people who were actually going to work on it, to say this is not crypto, this is actually a promising technology.
Kalika, you just mentioned permissioned versus non-permissioned. Do you want to take a quick minute to just explain the difference, and specifically for finance?
Yep. So let me just go down here to one of the slides. So basically, there are three types of blockchain, right? One is public. It's permissionless. Anybody who has a node can just go on it, and they can, use the chain. The second one, on the extreme, is permissioned blockchain. It could be a private chain, or it could also be a permissioned public chain. So if you heard of Hyperledger, if you've heard of these consortiums, they could, like Walmart. What they did was pretty much of a private chain of the parties who actually were on the chain could only access it, not anybody else. So in the blockchain space, we've come a really long way. When we started, there was no concept of a permission change and all of it. It started with the public blockchain. But over the last, 10, 15 years since it started, at least in the recent past, blockchain has made tremendous amount of leaps and bounds to be really thought about as a viable solution for some of those critical business use case that Yiwen talked about.
Even, do you want to talk about barriers to adoption?
Yeah, thank you. I think you hit really great point. I think education definitely is a number one barrier, and you already said a lot about that. Actually, in 2017, I co-founded an organization called LA Blockchain Lab, and the whole purpose is to educate government, officials from government, large organization, and startup about the application of blockchain. But I would say one of the barrier I see, especially for mass adoption, because you already see there are companies like yours adopted and they did a lot of POC. But for mass adoption to happen, I think the biggest barrier is technology itself. A lot of people are comparing blockchain with internet. Using that analogy, I think we are still at the dial-in stage of blockchain. We're not even at the broadband stage of blockchain yet. If you want to have a lot of cars in the highway, first you have to build a highway. But now we don't have a highway yet. What I meant by that is there is a trilemma of blockchain. So decentralization, scalability, and security. The current layer one, which are the basic structure of blockchain, like Ethereum, Solana, Avalanche, Polkadot, Cardano, all of them can only suffice 2 out of the 3 of those characters of blockchain, which results in high transaction fee, high gas fee, low speed, and long settlement. Each blockchain only address some of the problem that I mentioned, but not all of them. So in order, I think, for mass adoption to happen, technology itself still has way to go. It started in 2008, so how many years has this been? Like less than 20 years. And I think it took internet about the same time to get to mass adoption. So I think still patience, but also more talents coming, real talent, not just scammers or people try to make quick buck, really coming into this industry and build fundamental technology, basically the layer one blockchain to solve the trilemma of blockchain. I think is where I see the direction heading to. And when we finally can have high speed, low gas fee, that it actually comparable with just sending money through banks, then the mass adoption will happen. Just give a very quick example. One of the company we invest in that I can disclose, it's called Miston Labs. They're one of the most anticipated new layer one infrastructure blockchain funded by former Facebook engineers. And what they are doing is using parallel processing to redesign blockchain. The current blockchain, correct me if I'm wrong, is the transaction happens one block after the other. Mm-hmm. That means the more information you have on chain, the slower the chain will be, which is, we want mass adoption, we want more data, so we have to solve that problem. So parallel processing kind of try to solve that problem. Their lead investor is FTX, so I'm glad we closed the round before the saga happened, because I really think there are a lot of great talent in Miston Lab and other similar infrastructure companies, really engineers hands down trying to solve the fundamental problems.
So for example, I'm going to add, when Visa processes your transaction, do you know how many transactions they process in a second?
5,000?
24,000. And when a blockchain transaction happens, it happens 4 to 5. If you're really good, maybe 10. So that's the biggest, what the technology challenge that Yiwen is talking about. Unless we solve for those, and those companies like what you're mentioning, and the entrepreneurship power in this room with the new tech, the founders will really solve that problem. And I'm very hopeful it will be solved. Because the amount of traction we have seen in the last couple of years, since the Bitcoin wasn't one of those new shining kid on the block, has really given me the hopefulness that we will get there.
Maryam, you want to talk about barriers, and then our last question for everybody will be the ways entrepreneurs and innovators can work together. But if you want to talk about the barriers.
Yeah. Definitely, just something to add as a product person. The experience, the user experience for a lot of Web3 companies that we have right now, or even I think the first time a lot of us who work with a crypto wallet, we found that, especially the earlier crypto wallets, we found them very unintuitive. So on one hand, there is the education for sponsors, for innovators, for investors, for people who are actually to be aware of some of the benefits so that they could actually focus on blockchain. But then the infrastructure and product experiences, investment in infrastructure and product experiences, they go hand in hand. One of the reasons, even though we had this, surge in the usage for Web3 and the massive investment, in infrastructure was the reason for it was the fact that, there were NFT artists and there were a lot of applications and investors could see that, okay, once the infrastructure gets there, people are going to start using that and it's a business opportunity. So it goes hand in hand. Once we have the infrastructure, we're going to have the tool sets to create the user experiences. But at the same time, we have to proactively think about the intuitive user experiences. When people are interacting, whether it's an enterprise customer or an end user, when they are dealing with or using an application that is built on the blockchain or DeFi, they shouldn't feel with every action that they're doing something with blockchain. Right now, we have a lot of users on internet do many different things, but if you ask them how internet works or how it's built, they don't know that. It's just an intuitive experience. I remember in 13, I got involved in fintech, and I was also learning about banking systems. First of all, I was amazed how complicated, the whole settlement process was. And then how challenging was to actually take care of, users' banking needs. And we felt that, okay, well, we don't need so many branches. We could do a lot of that online. That's when I was at Green Dot. But one of the big challenges, part of it was having the infrastructure and the platform, but the other part was the user trust. How you could actually create applications when people feel safe to provide their personal data, or people feel safe to connect to their bank accounts. Mm-hmm. Same goes here. So from the product point of view, if you're a product innovator, if you care about user experience, I think this is also a very interesting challenge, how you could educate users, because some of the experiences would be a bit different, right? If you are working with the social media right now, some of the experiences are very unique to social media that you learned over time. How you could kind of educate the user, but in a way that's still an intuitive experience, because the more effective user experience we're going to have, the more people could see that this is going to actually scale, and the more investment and the investment. So they go hand in hand.
Thank you. We have a few minutes left, so I want to go quickly through the speakers and say, how can people in our audience, how can innovators, how can companies work together to solve or resolve some of these barriers?
So I can start. My take on this is really because it's such a complex, costly, and a disruptive technology that you need government involvement in it. We have an example, and on the screen you can see the Indian government in 2021 passed their national blockchain strategy. The Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology took it upon themselves to actually send a paper out there. They actually published a paper. And it's amazing. You will not know the amount of underlying technology they're actually using on blockchain. It's mind-boggling. You will not even know that. So I think you need that governments to step in. The Dubai was the first blockchain-driven smart city because the government took that initiative and built the underlying, laid out the foundation, laid out how it would all interact. Not all the applications are on blockchain. If you see some of them are like land records are on blockchain, some of them are not. Dubai is now moving towards their vehicle, their RTA, Road Transport Association, is putting vehicles on blockchain. The user doesn't know it's on blockchain, it just works. So that's how it should be. I mean, unless we have governments backing it up, we have individual states here who are more ahead than others, but unless we have the government backing, and of course, the thinkers and innovators come together and in partnership with the government, I don't think it's going to get where it should get.
Yiwen?
Yeah, I agree. I think regulation is one. And I want to talk about more from a finance investment investor perspective. Why regulation is important, not only in the US, but everywhere in the world, is because blockchain technology, together with cryptocurrency, one of the bubbles, no pun intended, can reach consumer, retail investor directly. So when any asset class, no doubt cryptocurrency is already alternative asset class. Whenever an alternative asset class reach consumer directly, there should be protections. If it's only touch institution, then they're the big pants, like they should think for themselves. But whenever that everyone, like our parents can even open Coinbase account, they need protection. So I think regulation is absolutely important, especially when FTX, such big scandal, or Luna big scandal being portrayed on media, it will just intensify this kind of scammy image of cryptocurrency together with the underlying technology. So I think regulation is important. The other two I want to quickly mention is from a builder and entrepreneur perspective. I really think that the company that we love are the company and entrepreneurs really building blockchain because they see the future, not because they want to raise money, not because it's a buzzword, not because they just want to do blockchain plus anything so that their valuation can go up, which could be the case last year because, as to your point, there's so much money being raised from the fund perspective. Andreessen raised $8 billion fund just in that fund itself, dedicated to cryptocurrency blockchain. So I think from a builder perspective, really do something to solve the fundamental technology problem. From an investor perspective, even just talking about ourselves, we're now become so much more selective, and that I see across the board. Venture capital, we still have 290 billion dry powder in VC, even during this recession, but everyone is becoming more selective, the valuation is coming down. So I think from investor perspective, it's kind of when the party is over, it's really the real build start, and the real winner will emerge from this winter time.
How can we solve the problem? How do we resolve these problems and move forward?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think I alluded to some of my points in the previous answer, but just to add on, I actually love the fact that we are out of the hype right now, because I was working on ideas, my own, the projects I was incubating, and also working with founders. And anytime that they said, oh, this is a LinkedIn for Web3, this is the new email for Web3, I'm like, okay, what is the problem you're solving?
Yep.
So both on innovators and investors, and I think that was partly also on investors, that they were just looking for anything Web3. The fundamental question for any innovator should be that, okay, what is the problem that you are solving? And if the technologies, if blockchain could help solving these problems, that would be best. Just to give you like one sentence, there are so many applications and so many problems in the world right now that require basically to solve them, that require middlemen, multiple middlemen, whether it's settlement, whether it's royalties, for entertainment and doing the payments, whether it's paying individuals overseas. There's so many. Like if you think about it, there are so many middlemen that their sole responsibilities and their job is to establish some level of trust between entities. And they do nothing else, and they're basically charging a lot. And blockchain is basically the promise to establish that trust without getting like a big chunk of money from the people who are actually creating value. So if you think about it, there are a lot of problems that could be unlocked. But the main thing for everyone, investors and entrepreneurs, what are the problems that we're solving, and just have some first principle thinking when we're approaching problems.
Thank you. I think that was brilliant. We have time for questions. Brenda.
A couple questions. Let me get you to wait for me to get the microphone to you so people can hear.
I have to add this that I know Sam Bankman-Fried is out of money and crashed it, but let me tell you, he's going to pop up in a few weeks or a month, and people are going to fund him. No woman founder would ever dare say to an investor, don't ask me questions, don't dare sit on my board, I'll do what I want, give me 200 million, then I'll crash it all and I'll come back 3 months later and I'll get funded again. But he will, and women can't do that. So anyway, Brenda, all yours.
Thanks. Fantastic panel. 2 questions. One, you talking about layer 1. I didn't hear you speak about Hedera. I'd like a perspective on Hedera as a potential other technology. 2, one of the best use cases that I want your opinion as experts, to move towards a huge use case is SWIFT, so the international bank. Mm-hmm. And there is some movement among central banks to actually look at blockchain to be the platform that may substitute the SWIFT, right? So just your perspectives on these 2 applications. Thank you.
I'll say one quick thing. There is a consortium between banks in Hong Kong, China, India, Australia, Dubai that have a consortium like that. That's the Middle East. That's been on for about 5 years. But and I know Ripple was trying to do that until they got shut down by the SEC. But I'll let our panelists go.
So unfortunately, SWIFT is not going away. Yep, because US regulations are the most behind, and none of those clearinghouses and settlement funds want to vanish. So in the near term, or even in the next 10 years, the way the money is transferred traditionally, fiat, is going to remain. What we're trying to do is probably digitize of a dollar. If we digitize the dollar and we try to use that through the transfer mechanism, maybe there's a chance, but we have to involve SWIFT in that as well.
Just something to add, quickly, because that's one of the projects we've been working on, is the stable coin is actually one of the primitives for, the primitive use cases for crypto as a whole that are going to stay. And we see a lot of promise, paying contractors overseas, doing money transfer, because this way, we might not get there in the next few years, but there are a lot of promises for stable coins that are truly stable. And pegged against, let's say, dollar or euro, and that would be the more effective way to do money transfer across borders.
Yeah, I also want to quickly add on that the central bank digital currency, CBDC, is also a very much discussed topic that I think each central bank, including China, probably US, India, are talking about that. My personal kind of concern or question about that is, blockchain and cryptocurrency by nature should be decentralized. If you have a centralized government digital currencies, kind of defeat its purpose. But I just want to throw it out there. That has been discussed, and we'll see how the future leads.
Question?
We have just time, unfortunately, for one more question, but here we go.
Okay. Hello. Thanks for the panel. Wonderful information. My name is Gunjan Bagla, and we're talking about something decentralized, and then we're talking about government. Historically, most entrepreneurs, most venture capitalists want to stay as far away from government as possible. And government is the largest middleman, really. So when we are saying we want government help to implement this technology, it seems like we are trying to cross an impossible bridge. And my question for anyone on the panel is, do you think blockchain will be commonplace, say, by 2030? 2040, when are we looking at this technology becoming invisible to the average person?
So I'll take the question quickly on government. We had an NFT panel, a year ago and stuff like that. I'm in favor of regulation, right? Because right now, I think 60% of people who use crypto are unbanked. right? So if we don't have government regulation, we're going to clean out a lot of people. And those are the people who cannot afford it. You also need to have financial markets regulated for them to thrive. So I'm in favor of that. And I'll just explain one government use case that stunned me. So the Customs and Border Patrol, the US Customs and Border Patrol, has a gigantic blockchain use where they're tracking everybody coming in and out of the country on all the visas on a blockchain platform, right? Now, over time, I will guarantee you that the US and each country will start sharing that. So they will track you as you move from country to country. So if you're a terrorist or you're without a visa, your visa's expired, they will be able to track you. So the government is using, and I had a CBP, Customs and Border Patrol. Actually, I heard him do the presentation, which kind of stunned me. So also, you need government help sometime financially, so that's why it's going to come in. But I'll leave our ladies to answer the rest.
I can go next. So we are asking government because imagine government is your biggest user of technology. Government controls a lot of your life that you don't want, right? So for example, New York just implemented their COVID passport on blockchain. So you are having government use blockchain, Illinois Department of Regulation, Finance and Regulation is using, they have partnered with Hirsch Health to actually put medical credentialing on blockchain because many of their medical practitioners that they had to pay through Medi-Cal, they could not just assess their credentialing. So government is a big user of those use cases which are big, which give you big benefit using blockchain. So apart from the regulation side, they're also consumers of blockchain technology. So if we get their support, and the ripple will happen, like you said, if small projects happen in different states here and in different countries where Middle East and Singapore and India are kind of leading that space and technology, then suddenly the ripple effect will happen. So it's not going to happen one fine day, everybody's using blockchain. It's going to grow slowly but surely, and then we'll turn over. So I wish I had the crystal ball and say it's going to be in 2030. I wish it's sooner, but we don't know. But we need enough of those use cases to come forward to solve the real life problem, and then we'll see a push.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question. It's almost like a philosophical question. Do we need government? Can blockchain, this decentralized movement, replace government? I would say one of the reason of why people are so interested in blockchain and cryptocurrency is a increasing distrust of institution from the mass. That including in any type of institution, including government, maybe including church. But in my personal opinion, that government is necessary. It will not be replaced by the blockchain. Blockchain is a technology that probably will put more surveillance and more balance to centralized entities. It probably will be existing in parallel. That we are living in a world that still have government, still have all type of institution, but also have this technology that enable more peer-to-peer transaction or communication. To the question of timeline, I think with so many real talent coming into the space from Silicon Valley, from Hollywood and from Wall Street, hopefully in the next 10 years we will go into the broadband era of blockchain, that technology itself would advance enough so that we will achieve this mass adoption. And the normal users won't even know that they're using blockchain because it's really just like internet, and that's the goal. They're using blockchain without knowing it.
Maryam, last word.
Basically, government is going to be there, but there's going to be more transparency and no hacking. And, government is still going to be hired by the people, right? Maybe some of the contracts are going to be on the blockchain, how the government needs to actually do its job. But, definitely way more transparency. Very optimistic. We've achieved so much already in 14 years.
All right, I think we're out of time. Thank you so much, Maryam, Yiwen, and Kalika. I really appreciate it.